This is what we're making, a single bead on a simple shank, hollow rivet, and it's just so you can feel the stone against your skin, nice and simple. I want to make a simple ring using a turquoise nugget or a turquoise bead. It's been pre-drilled, but the hole's too small, and I want to use a piece of chenille that I used on one of the other projects because I like the idea. This is going to be a simpler ring. Now I need to drill that hole out, and what works is this is a 1.5 diamond drill hollow core. And the thing about the hollow core drills is they're the same size from one end to the other. Yeah. So you're going to need your Dremel, if you're lucky enough to have kept your number 30 handpiece in your Fordham, chuck this up. Now, when you're using a diamond drill, you need to keep it and the material wet. So I've got a little Tupperware box that I've got water in. And what I'm going to do is put the bead in. And these beads are usually drilled on a taper, so what I'm going to do is start at the big end. So I'm going to hold it underwater. Slowly is the operative word. Slowly spin the drill, and it will work its way down through the existing hole. So a little bit at a time. You don't want it to get dry. If it gets dry, it'll spit all of these little diamond chips off. So slowly work your way through. Don't be impatient. So as you work your way through, it will eventually come all the way through. You don't want to force it because we don't want to chip it. Now, drilling this, I found, as you often do when you're starting to work turquoise, that it's predominantly epoxy. Natural turquoise will just be a dry white powder, whereas I was drilling this, it was actually smelling and curling up a bit like plastic. So it's a pretty bead, but unless you're absolutely sure it's natural turquoise, don't tell your customers it is. You can tell them what you think it is, or you can tell them what your supplier says it is, but oftentimes I've found that even turquoise that I thought was natural was man-made. Anyway, it's a pretty bead. It's drilled all the way through, and we're ready to make a ring with it. So check to see that your wire fits it, which it does quite comfortably. And now we're going to make a ring shank. And for this one, we're going to use 3 wide by 1.5 high ring shank. And same old story, get your ring size with the ring sizer. Take that diameter in millimeters, the inside diameter in millimeters. Add the thickness of the metal, 1.5, multiplied by 3.14. That will give you the length that you need for this ring. Cut your shank to length. Tidy up the end with your flat hand file, number 2 Swiss cut. Then your 400 grade paper just on the end. I would suggest you hallmark it now so that you can, so it's easier to tidy up. Check to see if you can bend it fairly easily. If you can, you don't need to anneal it. If you can bend it, form it around your ring mandrel using a rawhide hammer, leaving the end sticking up. A couple of sizes smaller than you would normally wear, because it will expand as you hammer it. Make sure that the ends are even, and we'll take our flat half-round pliers, half-round on the outside, even with the end, and we're going to curl that out a little bit, just so it's more aesthetic when we push it in. Put the ring on your finger or on your ring mandrel. Mark where the holes on the shank need to be. So you can just match where the hole in the bead is. Put a little texture mark on it. Put a small burr, small round burr in your handpiece, making sure it goes all the way in. Press your hands together. Hold the burr sideways. Spin it up, and it'll give you a little dent where you're going to place your drill. So we're going to drill through first with a 1 millimeter drill bit and then with a 1.2. So measure your drill bit, make sure it's a 1 mil. Make sure it's sharp. Look at the end. Put a little bit of wax on the bit. Hold your ring shank over the end of your peg, not in your fingers. You don't want to drill in your fingers. Rest the bit on the indent and drill through. Do the other side. If it gets sticky, stop, back it out, put a little bit of wax on the bit. Sometimes when a drill bit goes to break through, it gets to the far side and the metal starts to push out and it'll catch the end of the bit. So you either have to speed this up or you have to back it out and go in again. So now we're going to measure our tubing, make sure it's 1.2, and then go through with the drill bit that matches because we want it to be a good fit. As you run your drill through, just visually line it up with the hole on the other side because this tubing needs to go through straight. So once you drill your hole, check that the tubing will fit. We'd like to have a nice snug fit, but not too snug because we have to be able to put it through. So that's a little bit snug. I need to make it a little bit bigger. Now you can use what they call a broach, which is just a tapered reamer, which will just take out a little bit at a time. So push your wire or your chenier through, make sure it fits. Leave 1 millimeter on either side. Cut this with the saw. File the end of your rivet smooth. Don't hit your ring shank. take it out, anneal it. So you need to anneal this and polish this now. So after you've polished the outside, made it pretty, use your miniature buff on the inside. You could just as easily use your miniature buff on the outside. So we want all of the inside of the ring nice and shiny, even the bit that goes next to the bead. And when you have it all shined up, wash it and make sure that there's no dirt in the holes, and then we'll assemble it. Just to make sure there's no burr on the edge of this, I just lightly pass my sandpaper over it, both ends. And put it through the ring with just a little bit sticking out, and then I place my bead. Push the chenier through the rest of the way. Lining it up with a hole on the other side. So this is what we want it to look like, with a little bit of the chenier sticking out of either side. Rule of thumb says half the diameter, but on this type ring I like to have just a little bit more. This is about 3/4 of a millimeter on either side. Now if you're using solid wire for this, at this point you would rest this on your little bench block and use your riveting hammer to gently spread the end. But I'm using my nice sharp punch, and this is the chenier I used in a project earlier, so we're just going to spread this end. So spread the one end a little bit, turn it over, do the other end, work back and forth to make sure that you have the same amount of metal sticking out of either side, the same amount of rivet, I should say. And when you have it spread to the point where it won't slide through your ring shank, you're finished. You can take your little pendant drill with the hand piece and the buff and buff up the ends of the rivets, but that's it. Finished project, and you get to turn it so that you actually feel the turquoise against your skin. Once you get your rivet set, take your small buff in your handpiece and go over it. And what that'll do is it'll smooth off the little rough bits. So always run your finger over a piece. Make sure there's nothing rough. And that's what it looks like when you're done. So wash it up and put it on.